Hi, I'm Radical Coder. This is Umbreon. And real quick, before we dive in, if you want to make sure this little dude stays fed and warm, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments what I got right, what I got wrong, or what you want to argue about. Let's go.
Hello there, everyone. Getting into smoke, you too.
I mean,
I
dude, it's one of those things that like I really hated at the beginning, and now it's just like, kind of get it.
That's everyone. Right?
Yeah.
The first time I heard it, I was like, "What the?" And then it just instantly grew on me. I've been like, I couldn't get enough ever since. Honestly, are they like? Is that a touring band? Like, do they still play shows and shit? Like, they
do live bands and shit in America. You can get tickets to
that'd be so
live if you want it.
If I go, I will live stream it for you guys.
Oh, that would be funny. That actually would be funny.
Yeah.
But anyway, before we get too sidetracked, so let's tell the audience what's going to happen. So we're gonna do opening statements. So each Ryan and what do you want me to call you now that you've changed your name?
My name, Kontrolfreak.
All right, a Kontrolfreak. Okay. So both of you can we'll have 10 minutes of opening statements. Well, that's your time limit, and then we'll go to 1 hour debate. So you guys can go backwards and forwards for 1 hour. If the chat wants to add on more time, they can extend that as well if you're having a good backwards and forwards. And then after the debate's kind of done, we'll do 10-minute closes each. You both can have a closing statement each, and then we'll read all the super chats that have come in. And if anyone has any questions or anything like that, you guys can answer and all that, and then we'll go to open panel where people can join and share their thoughts.
Sounds
so that's the whole gist of it. So, you guys ready?
Sure.
Hell yeah.
All right, Ryan, you have the affirmative in this, so you get to open first, yeah.
All right.
So Kontrolfreak, don't respond at all while he's doing his statement until we actually get into it. Yeah. All right.
Abortion should be legal because forced pregnancy is state-sanctioned violence. In no other context does our government force someone to risk death to keep another person alive. Not for blood, not for kidneys, not even for their own children. But in half of this country, if you're pregnant, even from sexual assault, even as a child, the law says your body belongs to the state. And don't tell me it's rare. Alabama, Texas, Missouri, Louisiana, none of them allow rape or incest exceptions. And that means if a 12-year-old is assaulted and becomes pregnant, the state will force her to give birth. And even the so-called life-saving exceptions, they don't always protect people. Kylie Thurman nearly died from an ectopic pregnancy because doctors were afraid to treat her. Kat Kamek, a sitting member of Congress, had to argue with her hospital just to survive. Meanwhile, legal abortion is safer than a colonoscopy. Pregnancy kills 18.6 women out of every 100,000 births in the U.S. This is a relatively high motherhood mortality rate globally. If you're Black, it's actually 50 per 100,000, which is remarkably high in 2025. So here's my question to anyone who disagrees with me tonight. Should the state have the power to force a child to carry her assaulter's baby? Should someone be legally required to risk death just to stay pregnant? Does consent to sex mean permanent, non-revocable consent to every medical consequence that follows? If your answer is yes, say it with your chest. Say it clearly, own it. But if your answer is no, if you believe in consent, in medical freedom, and in the basic right to control your own body, then you already believe what I believe, which is abortion must be legal. Anything else is against state-sanctioned violence dressed up as virtue.
Kontrolfreak,
I have a question. I can't do that. Yeah, you're right.
No, you can't do that yet.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
Well,
I'm just here to say that it's pretty simple that abortion definitely should not be legal. At the end of the day, you're justifying sacrificing a human life for whatever personal belief you may hold. You can't really affirm the idea or the concept around killing a life and justify it in a sense that makes sense, logically at least. You can make the emotional appeal, you can try to tug at my heartstrings all day long, but there's nothing about the idea and the concept of abortion that is positive. It doesn't actually pose any benefit to society, and it also guarantees that lives will be taken unnecessarily, because in no way, shape, or form does anybody really believe that human life isn't valuable inherently based on their existence. They should be granted that, autonomously. My personal point would be to say that, sorry, I wasn't prepared for 10 minutes. Bear with me here. I would say that it's very important to understand the difference and distinction between murder, schmurder, and the justified side of taking a human life. And in no uncertain terms, if you are taking a child's life, are you not committing said act? It's very easy to get muddled down when your concept of, a life doesn't exist based on conception, which is what, scientifically we actually deem when life begins. It's at conception. You have a fertilized embryo, and the life begins at that point. The future potentiality for life is there, and inherently, it already has its life started, and it has its full life ahead of it. So if you take it away, then you're taking away all of its future. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, guys. All right. So we'll get into, you've got an hour back and forth. And chat, if you want to add any more time to extend, you guys can do that. So just try and stay within TOS.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you go, have fun.
So just to be clear, are you against abortion in all scenarios?
I believe that all abortion is more. Am I allowed to say that word? I do apologize.
That's
I keep
the topic.
saying. Okay, cool. I'm just making sure. I keep hearing the words, and I don't know the TOSs. Yes, I do believe that all forms of abortion should be illegal.
So that includes SA and incest?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you believe that if a 12-year-old girl is SA'd by her stepfather, that she should be forced to carry that pregnancy to term?
Well, it's not about force. You're not forcing someone to do something. You're not allowing them to commit an act of murder.
So if they have, if there is a doctor who's willing to give them an abortion, and they and their family are seeking one, and the state is saying, no, if you do that, we will lock you up, that is state forcing you not to get an abortion, right?
No, that is state enforcing the law. You cannot take a life unjustifiably. You're taking a life unjustifiably.
So the debate is not about whether we should take a life. The debate is about whether it is justified, which is fine. So you're saying there's no world where it's justified for a 12-year-old girl to seek an abortion?
No. You shouldn't be seeking an abortion. The topic of the debate is, should abortion be legal, not whether or not.
Okay, so one of the last things you said was taking away the life, taking away its future. Do you not see any contradiction there between the way that you are enforcing that a 12-year-old girl must give birth and potentially risk her life? I mean, if you're 12 years old, there's a very, very high chance that you might not survive that pregnancy. So you are very highly increasing her likelihood of sacrificing her own life. So it seems kind of a contradiction.
Can you dive into a little bit of how you're asserting that 12-year-old has a high propensity for that to end badly, for her to carry to the term?
So 12-year-olds, for the most part, have not gone through puberty and are not really prepared to go through the pregnancy process in any healthy manner. This is kind of common sense, right?
I mean, I think it's common sense that puberty is involved so that you could actually be able to get pregnant. Unless I missed that day in health class.
Do you think 12-year-olds can get pregnant?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you think that as long as she can get pregnant, if someone forces her to get pregnant, then she should be obligated to carry that person's child?
I think that she'd be obligated to follow the law, which is to make sure that she's not unjustifiably taking a life. Yes.
Okay, so what if that seems kind of like you're begging the question. So what if the law was before that she could seek that abortion, and then the law changed? So, and in some states that is legal, in some states it's not. So your opinion on this varies state by state?
No, I believe that it should be illegal in all instances. Absolutely.
Okay, but it's not currently. You said they should follow the law.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. And my point here is no. Like, abortion should be illegal. That's my point. And in that point, I'm saying that you cannot justify taking the life. That's what I'm saying.
Do you not find it morally reprehensible to say to a 12-year-old that they must stay pregnant for 12 months or for 9 months?
No, I don't think that you're asking the right question, because you're not
I
forcing
think it's an
someone
important
to
question.
carry.
It's a real question. People.
Oh, no,
in real
because
life.
you're presupposing that it's force, and it's not. Like, there's no definitive way for you to define that you're forcing a child to do anything. What you're doing is you're preventing them from doing something. So you're preventing an action. You're not forcing an action.
Okay, so what if she tries to starve herself?
Well, I mean, there's not much that you can do about that, in the sense that she's controlling her own outcome there. Like, I don't know what you're asking me exactly.
I'm saying, like, what if a woman decides that, okay, well, you're not going to let me get an abortion, then I'm going to go on a hunger strike.
So she's implementing self-harm. That's already not something that we condone or allow. I mean, kids get locked up in psych wards for that. I mean, follow whatever protocol that would entail.
Well, you're the one establishing these laws, so
I'm not establishing. This is a pre-established law. So now you're trying to circumvent the argument by
the
trying to say
the law in many states currently is that a 12-year-old can get an abortion. So you want to change that law. So what would you do to a 12-year-old?
We're talking about two separate points in one point. Okay, you're adding.
I'm asking you.
Abortion.
I'm asking you. Under your law, when you make it so abortion is legal in all cases, and a 12-year-old gets pregnant because her stepdad assaulted her, what are you going to do when she refuses to eat?
The same thing you would do if she was refusing to eat if she was not pregnant.
Okay, which is force her to stay alive and stay as an incubator, right, as well as a person.
Well, you're not. You're legitimately not contending with the argument. You're adding something in, and I'm contending with that, and I'm telling you it would still apply the same. The life inside of her, I don't think would really play into that necessarily, given your hypothetical.
Okay, you don't see anything at all. Even do you understand that you are demanding something quite terrifying to this child?
What, that she conceive a child to term because it's a human life and it has its own. 9 months, yes. I just answered your question.
Yeah, so you agree it's a horrifying thing?
No, it's not about it being horrifying or not horrifying. It's a bad circumstance all around, but that doesn't justify the taking of a life.
I'm asking you to imagine you're in the shoes of a 12-year-old girl who is. You
want to use my daughter as the example?
I mean, we could if you want to make it personal. We don't have to
Go
do
ahead.
that.
No, I know. I mean, I'll give you the most extreme example, and I'll answer your question.
So let's say that the stepfather of your child essays her, and then she becomes pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "This is horrifying. I don't want this."
Yeah.
Is it too bad?
No, absolutely not. I love my daughter. So I'd go to her and I'd make sure that she understands what's going on. I'd be there for her. I'd offer her anything I possibly could to make it easier for her.
Except for abortion, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's fine. 100%. But not only would you do that to her, but you would ensure that any 12-year-old across the country also is rejected from having that opportunity as well, because of your personal feelings, right?
It's not about personal feelings. This is about what is right and what is wrong. You can't unjustifiably take a life. Okay, so let me ask you this. Do you think that it's okay that if you made me mad right now, I reach across and just, do you think that it's okay for me to take that life because I don't like you?
Is it okay?
Well, I mean, you're asking me. No. Do you think it's justified that I just don't like you, so I do it? Or would that be considered murder?
Well, I think the difference here is that I'm not growing inside of you.
Okay, well, what's that have to do with anything?
Well, that would be the justification.
When you become what you called an incubator, that doesn't mean that they are part of your autonomy. They have their own autonomy. They're a person. They're their own being inside of.
Does it override yours in all scenarios?
No, it overrides yours in the sense that it still needs to be sustained.
Okay, so what do you do when there's contradictory needs?
Elaborate.
Like only one can survive.
Depends on the circumstance. It depends on whether or not the child is able to be kept alive outside of the mother, or if there's a way to save them both.
Well, I'm saying there's not. Like one's
the exact hypothetical so I can follow.
It's very simple. All the specifics don't matter, but the doctor has to make a decision. They can either save the mother or save the daughter. or son.
Doctors make extenuating circumstance decisions all the time that would technically be against the law in other instances that aren't actually medical practices necessarily. They have every right to decide whether or not the mother's life or the child's life can be saved. I would argue that they would probably be most suited to make that decision, and that's why they're given that discernment.
Okay, so what I am trying to communicate to you, I'm glad you said that, because right now in a lot of states they actually don't get the opportunity to make that discernment, right? So they actually are not in a lot of cases, doctors are afraid of losing their medical license if they try to save a woman who is having like an ectopic pregnancy under certain circumstances. So
you're making a pretty grandiose claim there. Could you please demonstrate that for me? Because I have absolutely
I listed two names in my opening statement.
No. I'm talking about where doctors are disenfranchised or not allowed, is what you said. You said they're not allowed in certain states. What certain states are they not allowed to determine whether or not someone who is on life support and has absolutely no way to sustain life on their own or no cognitive functions whatsoever, and they can make that decision themselves to go ahead and pull that plug? What states?
So when you go to the far extreme, I'm not saying that it's happening in those extremes that you just described, but I am saying that when there's a little bit of uncertainty, which there is more often, right? You agree there's more often a little bit of uncertainty about the safety of a mother, right?
Oh, absolutely.
More often than certainty.
I'll agree. Well, I mean, I'll agree with that.
So in those cases where we're unsure, those are the scenarios where it's starting to cause.
Okay, so you're just talking about a mild uncertainty. Okay, I'm sorry that you're uncomfortable about the situation of life and death. I mean, that happens to all of us.
I'm telling you, the decision is being made by these laws. They're asserting that the mother's life is less valuable than the child.
That's not what they're asserting.
That's what the laws are doing. Yes.
No, actually, the mother's life technically
pragmatic practice. That's what's happening.
No, if you want to talk pragmatically, we're actually having a discussion here saying that the mother's life is more valuable because she has to be there to sustain that child. She has to sustain that child. That is her role in that exchange. So she's not less valuable. She's either just as valuable or more valuable, especially because she's responsible for that life, right? But once you make the decision, once you allow them to make the decision to take that life, where are you going to draw that distinction in all of society? You're basically saying it's okay for the mother to murder her baby all day long, but when do you extend that outwards into other situations that have nothing to do with pregnancy?
Are you aware of any late-term abortions that were not made due to medical complications?
Why does that pertain to this?
Well, because you're saying that there's no limit. It doesn't seem like we even need a limit. It seems like almost all abortions I've ever heard of, all the data I've ever seen says that women are seeking abortions mostly in the first 6 weeks, if possible, and usually in far before the third trimester. That's extremely rare that women get abortions in the third trimester, and when they do, it's I've never heard of a situation where a woman was doing so for anything other than medical reasons.
I mean, I'd have to see your evidence of that, because as far as I'm concerned,
well, you would need contradictory evidence, right?
No. Well, I mean, again, what you're saying is pretty not true, because
if you could provide even one example, then it would contradict me. So,
one example of what? Because you're claiming that the majority of women are getting them for medical reasons, and that's not true. The majority of women are getting it because of economic status and because they don't want to have a child, because it's going to take up time in their life. That's actually more common.
So to be clear, when I said health reasons, I wasn't referring to all abortions. I'm referring to third trimester abortions.
Okay. So you're talking about one distinction. Okay, so yeah. So what would that matter if they're a human life already in the first trimester? Why would that matter? Why would it all of a sudden?
I was challenging your assertion earlier, where you said that there's no limit, that you could get an abortion at any time, and it seems like we don't even really have to deal with that, because women aren't seeking abortions at any time. They're mostly getting them in the first, usually early second trimester at the latest, and if otherwise, if they're getting a third trimester, it's all as far as I'm aware, always for medical necessity.
I'm not understanding what you're saying, because I'm telling you that under no circumstance, under any of the trimesters, should the abortion be allowed. It doesn't matter if it's the first, second, or third. So I'm not understanding what you're talking. Are you talking about?
You haven't given me any reason. You haven't justified
that
at all.
It's a human life. It's a human life, and it's considered.
We kill people under certain circumstances.
Murder. Yeah. What would be the circumstance?
Like if, for example, at least if they're at the risk, risking the mother's life.
Yeah. No. Define risking the mother's life. Like what? In what way are they risking the life? Give me an example of that.
Okay, so
are we talking preeclampsia? Like, what do we got?
So I mentioned the stat that 18 out of every 100,000 women in the United States die during childbirth.
18 out of every 100,000. Do you know what percentage that is?
It's a very small percentage, but it's still 18 lives, right?
Okay. Yeah,
18
absolutely.
adult women lives
Yep.
who potentially.
Yeah.
So
and in order to save those 18 women's lives, you're saying that it's okay for abortion to be legal and allow what, hundreds of millions of lives to be lost as a result?
I'm saying that you are demanding that all women who get pregnant risk being one of those 18 women.
Well, firstly, the majority of women that get pregnant get pregnant through consensual means. We'll go ahead and throw that one out there. Well, but this is important. So they chose something that they could have avoided. Like, again, abstinence is something that is pretty common in our society until recently. So the idea is, if you have sex, you're gonna get pregnant. There's consequences to your actions, right? So unfortunately, the consequence of the sex part is the pregnancy part, if you look at it as a consequence, because
so you recognize that consent to sex is not consent to 9 months of pregnancy?
It doesn't matter if that's your opinion, but the truth of the matter is it's always a consequence.
No, I'm asking objectively.
Yeah, no, it is. Logically, you're consenting to sex, you're consenting to pregnancy, you're consenting to all consequences of an action.
The possibility of getting pregnant, not the consent. You're not consenting to being pregnant for 9 months, right?
Technically, yeah, no, you are, because it's a human life now that inside of you. That's a human life inside of you that you have no jurisdiction over taking. It doesn't matter. You have no right to take your life.
Says who?
Humans. Again, we all agree that murder is something that we don't.
It seems like a lot of people disagree. So you haven't
no. The distinction that you're trying to make here, that you'd have to contend with, that the human life and taking of would not be murder. That would be the actual delineation here. The truth of the matter
murder is a legal term. So
yes, and it is illegal to take a human life, and a child that is inside of a woman's womb that has begun its life cycle is considered a human life. So again, it would be the unjustified taking of a human life. It's not justified.
Unjustified according to you?
No, according to logic, like you were just trying to appeal to.
Well, it doesn't seem like I don't agree. It doesn't follow from my worldview.
I'm sorry that you don't personally agree, but I'm telling you.
But it seems like that's the core disagreement here. So why don't you actually give something to substantiate?
That's what I'm waiting on you to, because again, this is something that we've already.
Yeah, I mentioned that the woman shouldn't have to risk her life, right?
Yeah, and I'm saying that she's not.
And you said she should, as long as she fucks first, right?
That's not actually what I said, but I guess it is basically the logical entailment. But at the end of the day, what I'm really saying is that if you're consenting to sex, you're consenting to pregnancy.
Okay, but you still recognize that logically there's two different, like, you can consent to having sex and then decide later, I don't want to be pregnant, right? Like, you can have a plan.
No, you can decide that you want to unjustifiably take a human life, sure, but I don't believe that that's right. I mean, again,
are you against Plan B pills as well?
Yes. I mean, it would be considered a chemical abortion.
So you would ban contraception like that?
I mean, that's a separate topic entirely, but sure.
So what do you think is wrong with the faculties of the vast majority of Americans who think that's a ridiculous position to hold?
Can you demonstrate that that's the vast majority of people's choice? Because, I mean, I can't.
Yeah, I guarantee there's polls on people supporting, like,
you can guarantee and you can assert it all day long, but you're coming here fast and hot with it. So I figured, I mean, you might as well.
No, I'm quite confident it's the case. Yeah, I mean, if you want to see a particular study, we can pull that up. Yeah.
Well, I figure I'm not just going to allow you to make this assertion
on contraception legality.
Oh, I love it. Just trust my studies, guys. I haven't even pulled them up yet.
4 in 5 Americans support legislation protecting birth control, protecting access to contraception. Wow, that's crazy.
Well, protecting access to contraception. I mean, that would go in line with
Plan B, for example,
abortion.
Right?
Yeah, that would go in line with, like, abortion, though, wouldn't it?
I mean, most Americans also believe in abortion or access to abortion, right?
And what was your original question?
I was asking if you would ban Plan B pills.
Yeah, and I answered that. What was the question after that?
You said yes, but
yeah, no shit. I just said that. I'm asking, what's the question after that?
You
don't even remember your own question? Yeah, you asserted something inside of your own question, and I made you look it up, and you've already forgotten your own question. So I mean, hey, we can leave it there.
Wait, I didn't have a question about. I already know. I know that most Americans support access to contraception, and I just pulled up a link, which I'm going to drop in the back chat. So you can look at it as well.
Are you just asking my preference here? Because I've already answered your question.
Well, I mean, all you're doing is asserting your preference. All you're doing is asserting your preference this entire time.
You asked me if I would do something. I said I would, and then you said so. This. I'm waiting for your question.
This isn't a question. I'm saying. I think it's ridiculous that you want to ban Plan B. I think most Americans agree.
I'm sorry that you feel that way, but chemical abortion is abortion. It's the same thing. Okay. It's the unjustified.
Why should most Americans take your worldview over their own?
It's not about my. Do you know my worldview?
It is literally about your worldview. Because if all these Americans disagree with you and they think contraception should be legal, then clearly you have to justify why it shouldn't be, right?
No, you're claiming that you know my worldview, saying based on my worldview X. No, I'm telling you logically. I'm logically.
You told me that you think contraception should be illegal. You said Plan B should be illegal.
It is scientifically considered a chemical abortion. That is what we're talking about.
And I said I don't give a shit. And it seems like most Americans don't give a shit. So why does that matter?
Because you're trying to argue with logic by using an emotional appeal.
I'm being very logical, yes.
No, you're not. You're arguing with logic using emotions. Yes, you're tense, you're upset, and you're saying, this is what I feel, so what? Argue with my feelings. I'm telling you, I've contended with your entire point by telling you this, and you have to contend. The only way out of this from the standpoint of logic is you're going to have to contend with the fact that an unjustified taking of a human life is not what's happening. So I'm asking you.
And I've said over and over that I think it is justified.
How is it justified to take a human life?
Because they're growing someone inside them and they're removing their consent to grow that person inside of them.
So do you believe in bodily autonomy?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so then why won't that child have bodily autonomy? Because it's a human life.
It's not growing inside of the child.
That's not what the question is. The child is growing from the mother. It has its own DNA. It's already formed its own essence.
I don't decide what's justified killing based on
No, you don't decide anything. Science does. Science decides life, number one, okay? So you're just saying that all women, including the women that just say, I don't want this.
Science decides life. Can you demonstrate that?
Well, yeah, science has already made it very clear. Life begins at conception. Life begins at conception. That is a scientific consensus, okay?
Where does science say that? Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, like every article that I've forgotten, like just the very first one on PubMed right here literally says peer-reviewed journals in biological life and science literature have published articles that represent the biological view that a human's life begins at fertilization. The delineation, it goes on to tell you the delineation is whether it's a philosophical or religious belief, but the scientific community has pretty much reached that consensus for a very long time. So
wait, what? Can you read that last sentence again?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Peer-reviewed journals in the biological life and science literature have published articles that represent the biological view that a human's life begins at fertilization.
Mm-hmm. What was the second part?
The second part was me telling you that the distinction becomes from Americans, where we argue from a philosophical or religious standpoint. It goes on to explain that you're arguing.
The peer-reviewed journals say that. What is the science actually? What's the science backing that?
What do you? I'm telling you that from a biological perspective, they've pretty much always had this consensus. What do you mean from a
biological perspective? Life begins at conception. What are you saying? I'm not saying, like, obviously, like, a human, like that like there's something created at that moment, but like when you say scientific conception says that life begins at
I didn't say scientific conception.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah, obviously I misspoke there. Come on.
Okay.
Like scientific consensus is that life began at conception. Yes. What exactly does that mean? That's a philosophical claim, right?
No, I didn't say. I just said fertilization just now. That's what I said like 5 times. Do you want me to say it again for you? Do you want me to reread this for you?
That's conception, right? Or you're referring to conception?
I mean, if you want to talk about it, yeah.
Right?
I mean, okay. You might as well. That's why it just says conception, because it sounds better. I mean, you know about the emotional appeal. You're making one pretty much every 5 minutes.
Well, I agree. So to be clear, I agree that scientists say largely that life starts at conception, but it's not because they are doing science that determine that. It's just because they largely agree with that statement.
Okay, so you can feel that way, but I'm giving you a scientific and factual.
You didn't give me anything. You just gave me a statement that says peer-reviewed studies found.
Yeah, do you want? I mean, again,
yeah.
I could.
So I'm asking you, what is the underlying science? What is the underlying science that is proving that this life begins at conception that all these scientists agree with?
I'm trying to figure out your question. I'm not trying to be bad.
What I'm pointing out is that I'm actually aware. I'm aware that scientists largely agree that life begins at conception. What I'm telling you is that this isn't a scientific claim. This is scientists agreeing on a philosophical claim.
Okay, but that's all that matters. Is when you're trying to go and you're actually taking things to their logical conclusion. You use science for everything. Logic and reason. You use science and math for just about every decision that you make. So, yeah, the majority consensus is genuinely that life begins at fertilization.
Recognize there's a difference between a scientific consensus and a consensus of scientists.
Sorry, say that one more time.
A difference between a scientific consensus, as in something backed by data, specifically like something demonstrated through scientific experiments, versus something that is agreed upon by scientists. Do you recognize a distinction between those things? If not, we can move on from this. This is a bit of a honestly, this is kind of a rabbit hole philosophy. But
no. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I just don't. No. I understand what you're saying, but I don't see how it has any distinction here.
I think it's important because it's a philosophical claim that scientists agree on. It's not something demonstrated by science that like life.
Well, you're asserting. Actually, you're asserting that it's philosophical because philosophical and religiosity are separate.
I think I'm telling you it's philosophical. Yeah.
No, but I'm telling you it's also a religious consensus too, and then that's not a philosophical.
Yeah, but why should I care about that?
Why should I care about your philosophical claim?
I'm saying I don't care about your philosophical claim. I'm saying that if scientists philosophically agree that life begins at conception, that doesn't tell us anything about whether or not it's justified for someone.
It doesn't matter if you disagree with science. You can't just sit here and say I disagree with science, so abortion be illegal. I'm not disagreeing with science. I agree with the science. No, we define things very, very clearly, and the reason why this distinction is made is so that we can define human life. It's very important, the essence of everything, because at the end of the day, the only real fundamental right that everybody would agree on is that a human deserves the right to live. Like they deserve that right just by the nature of being. There's no other. Let me finish.
You're saying there's no case where we can justify killing someone?
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. I said let me finish what I'm saying. Let me finish what I'm saying, and then you could say whatever you want. It's not that hard.
Okay. I apologize.
No, you're good. We've been pretty decent so far.
No, you have. I haven't had to interrupt you as much. So, yeah, just try not to talk over each other.
No, it's okay. It happens. No, what I'm saying is that fundamentally, whether you're secular or whether you're religious, the philosophical belief of rights, like fundamentally that humans have rights, the only right that is 100% agreed across the board is that human life is deserved by the person being born. Like it does, like in general, that is their only right given. Otherwise, no other right can exist. No other right in the world can exist without that. However you want to make the distinction in your mind, but I'm just talking about all human life essentially. So that's why the scientific consensus is made. So that way we can all latch onto one idea, which is, okay, human life begins here. We can have our debate and argument based on that. So the question here is now, and has been for quite a long time, how are you justifying that because I just want to get one because I can't afford it, that woman has the right to commit murder?
Okay, so I've given you a lot of different scenarios that are not related to just wanting one.
Not my hypothetical. I'm asking you in a hypothetical where you're just allowing abortion, and this woman just doesn't want to have the kid because she can't afford it. We'll even give it a little bit of emotion for you. Now you like that. So this person can't afford it.
Your entire thing is also an appeal to emotion, by the way. It appealed to the emotion of the baby.
No,
or whatever.
I'm following it down
the natural human rights that you assert by they have the right to the mother's body no matter what. Like that's an emotional appeal.
I appeal to logic. So it's
you're using logic to build on your
no, it's the other way around. It's the other way around. You use emotions. You can use emotions to appeal. You can appeal to emotions to help your logical claim, but you're not going to use logic to help your emotional claim. So you trying to do the
Well, actually,
the
that's what
former.
you're doing. Yeah, that is.
Oh, that's the
actually
form. That's what you're doing. I'm telling you scientifically and factually what's going on, and then you're starting by saying, "Oh well, emotions." So again,
Actually, I would say
hypothetical.
I'll
I'm
say that
just
we're
going
both
to ask.
doing that.
Oh, whatever you want to feel. I'm saying
Yeah.
I'm asking you a hypothetical, okay? And it's a woman
I still don't
that
follow that. Yeah.
fully healthy. She's going to carry the baby
Mhm.
to term just fine, right? In all aspects, and you know that. You know that right
Yep.
now.
Okay.
She
How
wants
do we
to
know
have
this?
one. She wants to have one. No. It's
We have future
entailed in the
sight?
hypothetical. It's
This is
entailed in the
hypothetical. We have future
hypothetical. You
sight. So
know.
in the real world, we
Oh,
don't have future
absolutely.
sight. To be clear, right? You understand that?
Sure. It doesn't matter. It doesn't
Okay.
hinder my
It does
point
matter because
whatsoever.
in the real world, we don't have that future sight. But
As I'm saying, this
Yeah.
woman just decides. Hey, we could take the future sight out. I don't care.
Yeah.
That's not really important part
Okay.
of my argument.
Well, it
it
is important, and can I tell you why it's important?
No, I'm just going to continue because you're going to keep doing this.
Okay.
So
Fair enough.
when you allow all abortions, right, you're going to have to
Mhm.
allow these people, which are going to be the majority people that get abortions because they can't afford their socioeconomic status, because they didn't want a child. So you're going to have to go ahead and cede that these people can have abortions, and that's what the primary base is going to be there. So I want you to tell me what gives her the right to commit murder. What gives her a right to take that child's life? What gives her that right?
So I believe in the right to bodily autonomy. Regardless, I do think that if you really want those people to not get abortions, then you should provide financial assistance. If they are doing so for economic reasons, then economic incentives would stop them, right?
So by what you're saying is abortions stay illegal and we give incentives.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm
we
saying
give them money and help take
to
care of
those
kids.
women who, because you said you're talking about women who are just doing it for economic reasons. Those women, I'm saying,
absolutely.
Those specific women, they
Sure.
would then go ahead and give birth if you gave them financial incentives. So that specific
Yes,
hypothetical you gave
so
me,
what I'm
we
saying,
can
yes,
resolve.
so what I'm saying
in that
is,
specific, hang on, let me go. In that specific hypothetical, we can resolve it through economic incentives.
but you're trying to resolve it. I asked you, how are you justifying her taking it? So you're saying it's legal, and that's, you do, because I'm asking you to contend with the logical entailment of your argument. This is what this is. This is what this looks like in the real world, not an appeal to an emotion, right? So again,
Well,
you don't
in the real world, there are people who don't have future sight, right? And they have to risk
we
their
already
lives.
eliminated that. Remember? Come on, Ryan.
Yeah, okay, so those women all have to risk their lives as well, and I don't think they have to.
You were doing so
under
good
your
for a
worldview,
minute.
they would have to risk their lives.
Again, you keep talking about my worldview. We haven't even flushed out worldviews. I didn't even bother.
Okay, when I say worldview, all I mean is I'm specifically referring to a worldview that is abortion is illegal or should be illegal.
So you're demonstrating once again that you're using terminology and things that you don't understand. You're over here trying to presuppose my worldview for me. You're presupposing my worldview for me is what you're doing.
No, you're just extrapolating extra things that I'm not adding in there, which is fine because I've been more clear now. I've clarified, and now we can move on past that, right? You understand.
I'm demonstrating your inability to follow your own logic.
Through your hypothetical, that woman does not have to risk her life because I believe that women should not have to risk their life.
I want you to contend with the argument and then contend with the hypothetical.
I'm telling
you haven't actually contended with the hypothetical.
You haven't given any reason that she should have to risk her life.
You have conceded the fact that this person, you legitimately, I'm just going to assert what you said.
Be clear.
You've legitimately just now admitted, in this instance, you're going to choose to allow the abortion not to exist. So you went ahead and decided that.
What do you mean by that? Can you restate that?
Yeah, I'll restate it. You're basically saying that this person cannot have an abortion. Like they're not allowed. They're not allowed. I'm not saying you're not allowing them to. Okay. I'm saying, I want to clarify because I know exactly what you were thinking I was saying. I'll try to word it better. I'm probably doing poorly here. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
No. But you're basically giving the ability for this person to not have the abortion in this hypothetical when I'm asking you, and the hypothetical, because you've made abortion legal, you're not stopping this person. Okay, this person wants it and they're going to get it. So what I'm asking you is, what is the justification for this murder? What is the justification?
Because they're risking their life and they don't have to risk their life.
No, they do, because they now have a child that is dependent on them for their own autonomy in life, that it exists in and of itself. It exists and she exists, right? That's two entities. Okay. It doesn't matter if she's implanted inside of her. It's that mother's responsibility, and the mother's responsibility to care for that child. That also means with her body, because that child now has its own autonomy, which you believe in. So by your worldview, which you've given, you believe that that child should be completely allowed into the world and to survive and thrive the same way the mother. We can get into a semantic distinction.
As long as it has her consent to continue so, yeah.
You don't need her consent. She had her consent when she... No.
You don't care about her consent.
No. You don't need her consent to logically say that this child has a right to live because it has its own bodily autonomy.
As long as it has her consent.
She gave the consent when she had sex.
But this is why I made the distinction between consent to sex and consent to staying pregnant.
You didn't make a distinction. You asserted it. There is no distinction there. Everyone knows that when you make
a distinction, if somebody starts having sex and then says, "I don't want to have sex anymore."
Logically speaking,
no, okay, this will make sense. I understand. If someone is having sex and then she goes, "Hey, I don't want to have sex anymore," and she withdrew her consent, right?
Sure, but she consented to the act.
Does the guy have the right to finish?
I mean, that would be great.
That would be. Yeah, exactly. Right.
So but that doesn't change.
So what if after that point she said, "I don't want to be pregnant. I don't want to grow a child inside me"?
Well, no, because again, life begins at conception. So it's already happened. It's not. I'm not saying it's a great situation.
Nobody is sitting here saying that. But that doesn't mean you have to grow that life for 9 months. Like, why should she have to?
Yes, it does because it's a human life.
According to you, because your feelings.
No, you're the feelings here, brother. I'm trying to explain it logically.
I mean, you have to kind of frame it that way.
Block by block. No, take it block by block. Okay, I'm calm and I'm trying to explain this to you. Okay.
Well,
taking of a life unjustified. No. What's the definition of schmurder? I've already said it 20 times.
I mean, it's a legal term, so
that's the definition of a word. I didn't say it. It's the unjustified.
You've said the unjustified killing. I've said that it's justified because people don't have to risk their lives. And I mean,
no. I didn't ask you.
Mothers don't have to risk their lives by giving blood or kidneys to their children already.
So the definition of taking the child in the act of abortion. I'm asking you the definition of the word that I've been using to describe what you're talking about the whole time.
And I said
you have
we already said.
Okay, so then why is it?
I'm sorry, we don't agree. I'm using.
Yeah, I get it. But why is it that we're now 40-something minutes in, and I'm still saying the same thing, and you haven't disagreed
because you're not
with
listening
it?
To me.
Oh, I have listened to you. You're saying that this person has bodily autonomy, right?
You're saying they have to risk their life.
No. You're they have to risk their lives because they consented to sex. That's the number one. That's a contract. Yes, it's a contract between.
And I'm saying that no, they don't have to because they can get an abortion.
No, because again, we've already established that life begins at conception. Taking that life is schmurder. You haven't justified schmurder. You have to justify that.
No one has the right to your organs.
No, a child has a right to exist once it's conceived, just like the woman has the right to your
kidneys. Does your child have the right to your kidneys?
The child has a right to whatever it needs to sustain.
If your child needs a kidney right now, do you think the government can force you to give your child a kidney?
Absolutely not. No.
Of course not. Okay, so why should it be why should you force to use a mother's womb?
What do you mean?
That's the
entailment. No. That's the entailment. That's the entailment of the sex. The entailment of the sex is that your body is going to be used for reproduction.
Okay, and the entailment of sex might be that your child grows up and needs a fucking kidney, and you are saying the state should not force you to use that kidney for that child.
No, because if your child ends up homeless, they don't take your house.
If your child ends up homeless, you'll be arrested.
No, when you said that child grows up, you said the child grows up.
I mean, yeah. Well, like they're under 18 still. Yeah.
Okay, so you're talking about an adolescent, someone that is underage, right?
Sure,
so
yeah.
They can't. Okay. Once you've actually given like birth to that child, they have their own independent autonomy and body. They're no longer reliant on you. The only reason the distinction is made, the only reason the distinction is made is because of where they basically grow. They have to grow there. That's science. Like you could take them out and you can put them in a lab, but that wouldn't be abortion because there's always another way to sustain this life. So if your argument is about that, then in my mind, the only way that you would be able to solve it logically for yourself would be that you wouldn't give abortions, but you would take them and implant them somewhere else. You would take them and incubate them somewhere else. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that the mother is in that exchange is an incubator. Like that's
I don't understand why. I actually don't understand the like how it's disanalogous to say that like a child would like if somebody's child needs their kidney. I don't understand why they wouldn't
because the distinction that you're trying to make is that I'm saying that it has to be in the woman. I'm not saying that. I never made the claim.
This is separate. No, they're outside of the woman now, right? And they need a kidney. Why should they not need their mother's kidney? You said they were obligated.
Yes, to conceive and give birth. That's what they're obligated.
And then
to do.
after that,
I didn't say they were
have to take care of the child.
No, I'm saying that they're not obligated to use their body for anything other than incubation if they have a child inside of them. But even still, what I've
why do they even have to do that?
Because that's how it works.
If the child would die without the kidney and they would die without the womb, what's the difference?
No, they wouldn't die without the womb. You could support a child's life without the womb. That's the point. You could support it artificially. That's what I'm saying. My point to you is that the entire reason
great technology for that.
Oh my God. Sorry. It's
okay.
No. It's quite not, because I've kind of laid it down. I mean, I've almost done it in crayon for you. It's getting frustrating because you're asking me the same questions I've answered.
Well, I imagine it is. Well, I'm asking you pretty clear questions. You're not actually engaging with the question. I'm asking what the difference is. What's the real difference? Like, what's the justifiable difference between forcing someone to carry a baby to term?
You're not forcing them
to. Okay, well, you are.
No, I don't know why you would. I've already explained it to you at least 5 times.
You're just using different words, but you understand.
No, you are.
You are forcing it.
You're using emotionally charged language to try to make a point that doesn't exist. You're trying to sit here and say.
So are you when you say murder?
No, we've already completely defined which murder is.
But I don't agree that it's unjustified.
Again, the hypothetical you refuse to answer. Where's the justification? Just because she wanted to? Because of her preference?
Her life. She doesn't want to risk.
She's not risking. Okay, again, she signed that contract when she agreed to have sex. At the end of the day,
but I don't agree.
No, it's the logical entailment of having sex. If you know,
entailment is not being pregnant for 9 months. If you get an abortion,
no, the logical entailment is getting pregnant. So there's the answer there, okay? The logical entailment of sex is you can get pregnant.
Potentially getting pregnant, yeah.
Yeah. Which, as a consequence, that's how people look at it these days. But I'll give it to you in that direction. It's a consequence there. Every act has a consequence. Okay. Ryan, if I was to just reach across and pop one time, aren't there consequences that are going to come?
Right now, but
no, absolutely not. But wouldn't there be consequences for that? Whether it's you striking me or me getting arrested, there could be all kinds. I mean, that's not a surprise to anybody here. But at the end of the day, what you're saying is that these consequences shouldn't exist. You're trying to sit here and say, oh, well, they had sex, but they shouldn't have to be pregnant. Well, that's the logical entailment of the consequence of the act. So again, I will lay it down one more time. Okay. The tiles are square pieces.
Yeah, lay it down again.
Square pieces. Okay. You get pregnant because of the chosen act, okay? Whether it was forced on you or not, unfortunately, it is the logical entailment of that. Now, is it unfortunately that the forced application happens sometimes? Sure.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, but at the end, again, my own daughter, right?
Sure.
At the end of the day, when you have that happen and you become pregnant and you've created that life now exists, okay? You can't deny that
you might have
life.
just been abused.
Yeah, that's fine, but you created it with your own body. Whether or not you did it through your own brain and your own action, that's irrelevant. The truth of the matter is you've now created a human life, okay? And that human life.
You're saying you created, but if someone assaults you and implants a child in you, that you're not, like, that life is being created. Doesn't mean you.
No, you have to. You were creating it.
You were violently assaulted, and now there's something growing inside you.
Oh, no. See, you're trying to draw a distinction between the act itself and how the actual creation happens. Okay. The beauty happens within the mother. And that's the reason.
There's nothing beautiful about a 12-year-old being assaulted by their stepfather.
No, you're absolutely right. But there is beauty in all creation of life. So again, the problem that you're running into here is that you're trying to say, oh, well, because it's forced, it's not creation. No, it's still creating it.
No, I never said it exists.
No. You're trying to say it's being created for her.
She's created. There is something being created, but she's not.
So how do I create a life? How do I create a life with you then? Okay, so if it's being created without her, if she's not the one creating it, how do I create one with you?
Well, it was created when it was implanted inside her against her will.
Okay, so Okay, so she created it. Who has the right? Who has the right?
Her body's creating it.
Who currently are we debating for the rights to abortion for? Who currently are we debating whether or not they should be allowed to have abortions, men or women?
I mean, women, but I also think trans men.
So men can't create children, is what I'm trying to get at, right?
Can.
No.
What? What do you mean? No?
No. That's not my point. I mean, that's fine. You can say what you want, but no, they're not men. That's the point. They're not men. You said trans men. You had to say trans men.
Well, they are.
That's what I'm saying. So no, they're not. No, that's a different conversation entirely. But no,
Swiss cheese is still
men.
cheese, right?
A man. Oh no, a man A man, right, doesn't have those parts. No, a man does not have those parts. It doesn't have the propensity or capability from birth to give birth. So that's not how that works. Again, I can take you down all these logical tracks, but I can't make you understand it. What I'm trying to explain to you here is we have already established that as a life that is growing inside someone, a man can't create the life, only the woman can. So there is no application happening magically. She's creating the life. It doesn't matter if she's over there in a workshop like a little elf.
Being created inside, it was created against her will, and it's now growing inside of her. It doesn't mean she created it, though, right?
The genetic material, the genetic material that her body used to fertilize that egg was provided
whether she wanted to or not, right?
Exactly. It was provided by a bad man. Sure. We're not disagreeing there.
Is an interesting way to phrase it. Yeah,
I didn't know another way to say it, if I'm just going to be completely honest with you. I was trying not to be gross.
I was saying inserted. Forced.
Sure. You can go ahead and use an emotional appeal, but at the end of the day, it doesn't.
It's an emotional. I don't think it's unreasonable to be emotional about 12-year-olds being assaulted, right?
No, it's unreasonable to try to use your emotions to justify an argument that's logical. Okay. Right now, we're talking about something that is very important. Okay. The distinction of life and the taking of life. Okay. You're trying to demand that it's okay and assert that it's okay to take a life, and you're using all the emotions you possibly can to do so. So my question to you is, and I'm not even trying to attack that or your character. My point to you is I'm trying to walk down the same track together to see if we can maybe come to a consensus or not. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to say to me, you're trying to say to me that you can't answer the hypothetical I posed. I've made consents. I've conceded some things to you.
I did answer. I thought I answered all the hypotheticals.
No. You never gave a real reason for why it's okay for her to take the life.
She doesn't have to risk her life.
She's not risking her life. She's murdering something.
Okay.
She's deciding to murder something.
She's murdering something because
let me make sure I ask this question.
She's killing something because the alternative is risking her life.
Guys, try and keep the TOS to a minimum, please.
She's killing something because the alternative is risking her life, right?
Sorry, I was trying to figure out what I said.
Okay, well, it's a pretty simple, it's a straightforward question. It's been
no. What I said there was TOS. So. I was talking about TOS.
I think it's maybe the M word or whatever.
Oh, okay, I think you did. I think I did.
Yeah, but so she's ending a life. I agree. She's ending a life. She's ending a life because she doesn't want to risk. She doesn't want to risk her own life.
So you're saying that it's justifiable for me to say I don't want to risk my life, so I take yours.
If I'm growing inside you, yes.
So you're making a semantic distinction based on pregnancy alone, and you're trying to say that you can justify that.
It's a pretty unique
across
scenario, right?
The board. No, across the board. Right? No, it's not unique at all. I mean, again, it's all human life. It happens all the time. It happens every day. It might be unique in nature. There's no
other process like abortion.
No. It might be unique in nature, but not in practice. I think I don't know if we're talking past each other.
I agree. Obviously, I know pregnancy is common. I'm not saying it's
okay. That's why. No, but that's what I thought you were saying. So that's why I was making sure that we weren't talking past each other.
I'm saying it's unique as a phenomenon, like separate from other processes.
Sure.
Like it's the only thing where life is being created inside of you, right?
Yeah. No. Okay. Sure. But it's common. It's everywhere. So what you're saying is that in that instance, you're okay with hundreds of millions of schmurders. You're just okay with that. Like if every mother,
I think it's more just to lay it out more. I think it's more horrifying to force women to risk their life for that child against their will than it is for those women to have access to that procedure.
Okay, so in my hypothetical here, I'm asking you a distinction about just schmurder alone. Okay, so are you saying that in all instances of pregnancy, it would be okay to schmurder all the babies? Like you're okay with using, because you did say it's taking of a life. It is an unjustified taking of a life.
Oh, I don't agree it's unjustified though.
Okay, so then justify.
Okay, so I can clear this up.
I want you to justify.
Again, I've been answering this over and over. It's justified because you are not obligated to risk your life for another.
But you are. By the simple nature, by the simple law of nature, because you yourself have because you had sex and then you had a child. So when you get pregnant and you're obligated to take care and sustain that child in any way possible, even if that means that you have it removed from you and put in somewhere where it can gestate and actually can grow. Yeah, you still have that. You have that obligation. You have that moral obligation. Absolutely.
According to you.
No.
Where does that come from?
We all agree that human life is valuable. We agree that human life
including
has a right.
Autonomy, yeah.
So I made this point earlier that
It's
No,
not
no,
a
no.
right
The
to use someone
consensus.
else's organs.
No. The consensus is legitimate, and I've already stated it before, and you never contended with it. Do you want to contend with it now?
I'm asserting that it's not your right to use someone else's organs. even
No,
your
I'm
mother's.
saying that all human life, from the beginning of life, deserve the right to life. Okay, whether or
Unless
not that
impedes on
happens.
someone else's.
Oh, no, again, I made this distinction earlier and you didn't refute it. So are you trying to say that it's incorrect now? Because again, this has been a part of the conversation for like 20 minutes now. I've said this 3
Which part's
times.
incorrect? I don't understand what you're saying right now.
I'm saying that we both, I mean, you didn't contend with it. It seemed like you agreed to it. So I'll say it again, that the only way that anyone has rights is the fundamental belief. A secular believes it, secular society believes it, religious society believes it. It's the only pretty much universally agreed.
I don't think rights are some I don't know,
No,
supernatural thing
we're talking about
even,
moral. Yeah, we're talking about morality here. So at the end of the day, the only
Yeah.
thing that everyone agrees on is that when you're born or when you have life, human life itself, the only fundamental right that you have is to that human life. That's the only right that you have morally. I'm not saying like cosmically or however you want
What
to
if that
view
right?
moral.
Okay, exactly. So what if that right entails using someone else's organs?
Well, yeah, that's how pregnancy works. Again, that's an entailment. That's an entailment of the belief.
Okay, well, and I'm saying that it doesn't make sense to me to force someone to use their
But it
organs.
made sense for you for
another life.
25 minutes. So okay, I'm not going to
It
go.
never made sense to me. That my position has been this entire time that that doesn't.
No, I said that, and we both agreed on it, and we moved past that.
I've never agreed that you have the right to someone else's organs.
That's not what I said. Again, and I'll say it one more time. You're adding that in. Okay, you're adding that on top of it.
That's part of pregnancy.
Okay, it's an entailment of what I said you agreed to. Okay, I'm sorry, that's how logic works. So at the end of the day,
what did I agree to?
We both agreed. I
think I agreed to.
Okay, human life, the only fundamental right that people agree on, okay, is at the beginning of life, you have a right to life. I'm not making a semantic distinction in that argument or in that point, because that is something that is universally agreed on, because that's how everyone gets rights to begin with.
But again, there's scenarios where that right to life can be impeded on. Like, for example, if
no one's saying that an external force. No, this is where you're not understanding. Okay,
there is no external force carrying that.
Yes, so there's no one saying that the external force can't extinguish, right? There's no one saying that's not going to happen or not possible, okay? We're talking about the fundamental right, okay? The fundamental right to life exists, okay? And since we've already made the distinction scientifically,
not in all cases.
In scientific, what do you mean? Demonstrate.
You don't have a right. You don't have a right to life. You don't have a right to life if it necessitates you using someone else's organs.
That's again, you're taking it, and
you're not. You're just not engaging with this point.
Well, because again, this is something we agreed on a little bit ago. But if you're going back to it, you do have the right. You do have the right.
You don't have the right to my organs.
Okay, so I'll put it to you this way: this person's not coming and using and borrowing and taking. It's different than me going into your house and trying to use your stuff, right? That's not what's happening. What's actually happening is this person brings this life into existence. They create this life. That's their responsibility. That is their job. So you can make.
They have to have that responsibility. I don't agree.
Yeah. Well, but no. According to science, that's how that works.
Science doesn't talk about.
If you put P and V, you create life. Okay. If you've now created life, you don't have the right to take that life.
I don't have any kids, but I've had sex a lot of times, so that's not true, right?
I don't believe that, bro. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Because again, I'm explaining to you the basic fundamentals of how making a baby works. So when you agree to that contract,
there's like ways around that, right? Like contraceptives and like birth control and shit that you apparently think should be illegal.
What's your point?
So
I'm asking you, what's the point of your statement? Are you just asserting something?
Wait,
I don't understand your point.
Well,
I'm telling you point blank, and I've said it like 5 times. Okay, you have to justify that you're taking the life, and you're not justifying it by saying they don't have a right.
Justifying it by saying you don't have to risk your life.
Yes, you do. If you want me to go down that path, I can. No, you genuinely.
Okay, but that's what I've been asking you to do for the past hour now.
You've agreed. It hasn't been an hour. You've been in here for an hour. You agreed to have that child. You agreed to have it when you consented to sex. whether
I
you
don't agree
consented
with
to
that.
it or whether it happened.
Because this is why I made the distinction. And
It's a
you need to
logical
understand my
entailment
distinction.
of the sex. What's the distinction specifically?
The logical entailment is not that I'm going to be pregnant for 9 months. The logical entailment is
Yes,
I
it
might
is.
get pregnant.
Okay, yeah.
You agree it's logically just to be clear.
Yeah, you're right.
It's
I
logically
said you're
possible to end a
right.
pregnancy.
No.
Okay, cool.
I think it's physically possible.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, of course. It's logically possible as well, right?
Yeah. That's what I meant. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so therefore it is a different thing that you're consenting to each day that you wake up and decide I'm going to continue this pregnancy.
No, absolutely not. Because again, it's already a human life. You believe in bodily autonomy. We've been down this path. It has its own
Why does it
bodily
have the right to
autonomy.
your organs?
Because you brought it in here. You created the life. You can't just take the life that you've created. That's not how life works.
Okay, so what if it needs your kidney?
Or if you're gestating it, that's different. If it's using your resources when it's inside of you, that's different. If you're talking about when the child is born,
after birth.
you're not required to give your physical body to your child because it's no longer
Isn't
inside.
that what you're doing the whole time it's growing inside you?
That's a part of the fundamental process.
Yeah, who cares? Why does that matter?
Why does what matter? That it is their
Why is it
responsibility to take care of their
once
child.
they're born?
Because they're taking care of it differently. It no longer feeds off of their body. It's its own.
What if the umbilical cord needed to stay attached for some reason?
Yeah, no, I mean, everybody knows that whenever it can sustain itself completely, it becomes a completely separate situation. We're talking about incubation. You got gestation and incubation. You're talking about scientific medical. You're talking about scientific.
I'm saying I don't see the difference. I don't see the difference between forcing someone to give their kidney to an already born child and forcing someone to grow a child inside of them and let it use their womb. I don't see the difference. Can you explain it to me?
Say that one more time. Sorry about that.
I don't see a difference. Okay, I see both of these things as somewhat like the state forcing you to use your organs for someone else's rights, which doesn't seem like that is like we just don't.
So are you saying that you don't understand the difference between someone that's incubating somebody and somebody that's able to sustain themselves, that's self-sustainable?
I don't
understand the distinction.
I don't understand the relevant difference in terms of why they should need or be forced to use those organs.
Yeah, no, I mean, so what I'm saying to you is the logical extension of having a child is that child's going to require your body to sustain until it is able to sustain itself. That's how that process works. So once that process is completed, a new stage of life begins. It's not a new
What do you mean
life.
A new stage of life?
What do you mean?
When you say it's like you're saying once it's born,
like there's different stages. I said you have gestation, you have the growth stages.
But why are those morally relevant to this specific thing?
Well, because you're talking about schmurder. So I'm giving you the distinction.
Well, you're calling it murder. I don't think it's unjustified because I think you're risking your life while it's inside you.
But
I don't think
okay, so risking your life for the child that you agreed to create. You're creating that life.
You agree to have sex doesn't mean that you're agreeing to grow up for 9 months. You acknowledge that, right? Because they're logically distinct things.
Say that again?
You already agreed that it's logically distinct to consent to sex and consent to pregnancy.
No. I didn't say anything about consenting to pregnancy. I said that pregnancy itself, the entailment is the sex. So the sex gives the pregnancy. I didn't say you had to consent to the pregnancy ever.
It potentially causes a pregnancy. That doesn't mean that you have to
But what I'm saying is the logical entailment of you saying that I want to have sex. You have to agree with yourself that the potential exists for you to get pregnant, okay? Once that happens, the life has been created. Once the life has been created, we have laws in place to stop you from taking those lives. Okay, it doesn't just become
not in every
justified.
State, only in about half the states right now.
What do you mean? No, I'm saying that I'm talking about straight up just about the schmurder in general. So at the end of the day, what I'm saying to you is it shouldn't be legal because when you're saying that this life has been created and the murder is the unjustified killing of a life, you have to justify it. You can't say, "Oh, because it might kill the mother."
And I've justified it. Yeah, because
you're talking about this.
You don't have to risk your life for someone else's.
How many women per year actually die from giving birth?
Well, it's 18 out of every 100,000 and 50 out of every 100,000 if you're a black woman.
Again, so I'm asking you.
So you have a higher chance of dying if you're a black woman, by the way.
No, as I asked you before, that 0.9%, 0.8% that you're discussing or less.
Those lives.
Is that more? Is that more, or I'm asking you that question? Is that more or less important than the hundreds of millions that might potentially be aborted because of your belief?
So those people risking their lives, not just their lives, by the way, because there's obviously tons of other medical complications that can come from pregnancy, right? You agree with that?
I'm waiting on you to answer my question. I'm not
So
answering
they're
your question.
risking, yeah. So I'm saying that risk justifies an abortion. Yeah, of course.
So no. I'm asking which one are you saying is more valuable? Are you saying that it's more valuable to have the ability to abort that so that you can kill all the others?
I
Because
think
that's the logical entailment of what you're saying here, is that it's okay for you to do that,
sure.
even though it's going to kill all the others as well. So you're basically saying that
it's only going to kill the ones that people decide to abort, right? But yeah, of course, yeah.
So what is justified about taking life?
So it's justified
What is
because
justified?
you are not obligated. It's justified because you're not obligated to risk your life for that other life.
No, but you are biologically, because
according
that
to you,
child is
biologically.
According to biology, that
here,
child requires certain things that only that mother can provide. That mother's
I'm saying if it required her
is
kidney,
that child.
you wouldn't force her to give her kidney, so it doesn't follow.
No, it does follow, because again, once you've been born and you have the ability to sustain yourself, you're no longer using the nutrients and the parts of your mother's body that you were using before. You're not using the kidneys. You're not using any of those things.
But what if it needs this?
There's a huge distinction between the two.
What if it needs some blood?
It's not a requirement, because that entity can sustain themselves.
I'm saying, what if it needs those things? And hypothetical, what if it needs those things to survive? Which this happens.
What do you mean? Are you talking about after it's born?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a requirement that parent give that material,
because they shouldn't have to give up their right to their organs.
No, it's not about that. It's at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is you're trying to draw a distinction that doesn't exist. What I'm saying to you is, once they're inside, okay, once they've been created, you have a obligation, because it's a life, and the only way to expel that life is to either give it somewhere else or. Yeah, and then when I've already made that distinction, that once you give birth to that child, you've basically put it into the world on its own. It's able to sustain itself. What are you not understanding about
unless it needs
the actual distinction that we're discussing here is that when the baby is inside, it requires these things. There is no fundamental guarantee that if they leave that body, they're ever going to require said thing again. So the reason the distinction is made is because it's its own self-individual. It doesn't actually rely on the inside of your body.
We're describing a scenario where they do need that, or they do need an organ from that same parent. And
yeah, it's like I said, it's disanalogous completely, because they're completely distinct things. I've just laid that out. Different stages of life.
In what way are they in what morally relevant way are they distinct here?
Because okay, you want the morally distinct. I'm glad you asked it that way. No, I'm glad you asked it that way, because at the end of the day, no. At the end of the day, you're asking the difference between sustain and schmurder. Okay, what I'm telling you is you don't have the right to schmurder. You're not schmurdering your child if they need a kidney. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't track logically. You're just trying to emotionally assert that at the end of the day, because they needed this, that is also true. No, they don't. They're not required to give that.
If we could remove the child from the womb and just like leave it, and we're not schmurdering it, we just took it out and it just died, that would be okay then?
No, that's still schmurder. You took away its life force. You took away its life force. Okay. You took away its only propensity for life.
Yeah, the organs it needed to survive, right?
Yes, in gestation.
Okay. And so after gestation, it no longer if it suddenly needed an organ
after birth.
Okay,
once it's its own
birth, if it suddenly needed an organ, now there's no obligation anymore.
Well, no, there's plenty of obligation, but it's not the same. It's not the exact same obligation. It doesn't require your body to sustain itself. The moment that it's born outside of your body, it doesn't need you to sustain itself. It just doesn't. It can
get those things. I'm asking
you're saying where it does. Unless it does, but the distinction has already been made. I'm not understanding the question.
I feel like there hasn't been a morally relevant distinction made.
Yes, there is, because again, you're not contending with the point that I made inside of that. I just said that schmurder is when it's inside, because again, you're required to sustain that life. When it's outside, you're not schmurdering it by not giving it something it's not already using. It's not using your kidney, okay? So you're not taking it away. But you're not schmurdering it. That's what I'm explaining to you.
Okay, but again, you said it's murder if you take it out. If you just take it out.
You're not understanding that you're not killing the kid. The kid's just dying. That's a different distinction.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Not
so if we just abort, which abort means to remove the fetus, right?
No, you're schmurdering it, because you're taking away its life force that it's using to sustain. Again, track the logic.
No, you're not. You're just removing yourself. You're moving away from it. You're exit.
No,
the
if you
situation.
take the child out of the mother, you're taking all of the nutrients and things that it needs to sustain itself. You're taking all of the things it uses away from it. You're taking it away. Once it's born, okay, you're not taking away the kidney. The kidney's just bad and they need a new one, okay? That's not you killing your child, okay? There's the distinction. Okay, do you understand the distinction? So that we're clear, do you understand the distinction?
So that leads us back then to them not having a necessary, or not necessarily having a right to those organs while they're inside you either.
No, but they do. They have a fundamental right because you were creating that child, and bodily autonomy, your own argument. Bodily autonomy, it has its own bodily autonomy.
Gives you the right to someone else's organ?
No, the bodily autonomy of that child. The entailment is that it's being.
What about the bodily autonomy of the woman to not yield her organs?
She doesn't have the bodily autonomy to not yield her organs. She consented to the pregnancy.
All right, guys. We're gonna go to closing
statements. Pregnant is the whole point, right?
Okay. Do I do mine first or him?
Yes, you're first, Control Freak. So if you could give your closing statement and run, and then but be quiet until he's finished, please. Go ahead, Control Freak.
I think that it's been pretty well established through this conversation that there is no justified reason that you should be able to take a child's life from the mother. At the end of it, or allow them to take that life. It is murder. God, I keep saying that. I'm so sorry. I need to stop. I'm having a hard time with that.
You get the hang of it. You're new. It's all good. Just try your best.
I'm trying. I'm sorry. We've tended back and forth with the same circular argument of the distinction between whether or not it's a life of its own. By his own worldview and his own admission, he basically conceded the fact that bodily autonomy exists, and using bodily autonomy, you shouldn't be able to say that this life is less valuable than the other. Both lives are valuable, and unfortunately, accidents do happen. But the actual delineation in this would be that you don't have the right to force that life to not exist by not giving it what it needs after you've consented to having that child. Whether or not you did it consensually through the act itself is what provides that consent. So since you've created that life inside of you, you now have to contend with that life. You can't, get rid of that life. And once that life has come to fruition, you're not responsible for giving it a kidney or whatever, because you're not actively taking that life. I don't think that Ryan has in any way, shape, or form demonstrated logically that there's any reason why we should ever allow these things to occur, these horrible, horrible atrocities to these lives. He just tries to make the distinction that because they don't feel like they want to have the child, or they feel it could be dangerous to them. I think that it's been pretty well established that abortion should be illegal. I yield my time.
Thank you, Control Freak. Ryan, can you give us your closing statement?
I mean, I think I've been pretty clear, like from the get-go, that number one, consent to getting pregnant is not consent to staying pregnant. You don't have, no matter what rights you establish you don't have the right to someone else's organs. In no scenario do you have the right to someone else's organs, just period. So if somebody says, hey, I don't want to give my organs to this person anymore, they have that right. It's a difficult decision, and I don't want to take it lightly, and I don't. But fundamentally, that is you're forcing someone to stay pregnant, and I find that morally reprehensible. And you have not given me any justification for that at all. You just asserted over and over that it's like morally necessary, and I obviously tons of people, most Americans, drastically disagree with you. So I don't know why we should care about your moral certainty when we don't believe that justification exists. So yeah.
All right, we got open panel now, so if anyone wants to join... we got super chats first. My bad. Getting too far ahead. So let's do that first. Oh, we know Mem was about to go to fucking go, what the fuck are you doing, bitch? Okay, K2 says, Coda, do some more dips for $2. We got Craig says, can't destroy eagle egg... Fuck, I'm.
What? I can't even read that.
Read it. I can't read it.
Can't destroy eagle egg without prison can babies? I don't know. I don't know what that says.
I don't know what that means, man.
Craig, I'm trying, man.
He's saying that if you kill an eagle egg, then you'll probably go to prison because it's in
Oh
danger.
yeah.
right?
It's in danger.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember
Well, yeah,
the
but again,
were-
but it's actually pretty easy to
Oh,
engage with, right? Because nobody has to grow an eagle inside of them. So
Okay. And then Mad Max comes in with $10. Thank you, Mad Max. Thank you, guys, everyone who sent in some super chats. Ryan, do you want to read this?
Craig with the 199 says, "L Ryan, I'm embarrassed for you. Take the D, carry the B." And yeah, I disagree. I think consent to sex or lack thereof, which it didn't even that wasn't even a morally relevant thing in this discussion. Because if they didn't consent, my opponent still asserted over and over that they were morally obligated to carry that child to term, which I find quite disturbing, especially especially in terms of children. So, you know,
Craig made a little bit more clear what he meant too with the eagle egg thing. There you go. Thank you for clarifying, because I had no idea what you were trying to say. Here you go, Ryan, another one for you.
What about your squatters? Are you Gots Ryan L? I think I understand you're making a Shrek reference from my epic Shrek analogy and toxic masculinity debate, which was pretty based and has only proven to be more apt.
I gotta say, I love that you're a good sport and that you actually read out these super chats that are directed at you and stuff. That's fucking cool. I like that.
I mean, I'm a attention whore, so it's fun for me, you know. Yeah,
I know that. We all know that, but it's still hilarious to me.
Sorry about that.
Realizer with the 199 asks what trans people have to do with Swiss cheese. So there was a point where I said that trans women or trans men can get pregnant, and he said that trans men weren't men, and one of his justifications for that was that I have to use the word trans before them, and I clarified that Swiss cheese is actually type of cheese.
That's not what that's not the distinction I made.
Okay, well that's what I heard you say, so maybe I misheard.
Did you hear the end of it?
Do you care to elaborate?
Yeah, when I said that the distinction between what man was that men can't actually, create life. They can't give birth. They don't have the propensity to create life. They don't have those organs. So you can't say a man can have children regardless of whether or not you add trans in front of it. A trans man is not a man.
Trans men do have those organs.
Trans man is not a man.
You disagree with them being a man. So
no. I'm telling you that like it was a moot point because again, the requirement to be a man. I even gave you the definition of a man.
Your requirement to be a man, but we don't.
I gave you the definition and you didn't disagree with it. So I mean.
No, I don't agree with your definition of
man. You don't now, but you did earlier because you didn't. I never
agreed with that. No.
You never contended.
I definitely have never agreed with.
So Ryan, I don't know if you know how argumentation works, but if I make an assertion and you don't go against that assertion the same way that it happened before, and you kind of let that slide with the whole everyone agrees on life. I mean, you made the concession by not arguing
necessarily. I can hear you out without like refuting every single premise that you established.
No. If I assert that a man can only. You're right.
You can come back to this.
No, you're right. You're right.
Come back to this after.
Right.
Trans men are men.
Ryan, can you please read out the last super chat? And then we're going to
K2 keep on trucking with the $2 says Ryan dipping on L's 2 days in a row.
Yeah, those are some pretty bad dips though.
I mean,
Ryan,
we've done a bunch before this, you know.
Fizz in my cup, swimming good love. It was you at the club, miss your touch. Go again, baby. What's up? Nothing feels right, so let's mess up everything.